Recording in progress.
Hello, Greens. This is Switzer of the BMRC and Joe Bongiovanni, formerly of the BMRC, now an advisor. And recently we got a response from Warren Mosler, or he sent us comments on section M and N of the Green Party's platform. Now, M is the section on debt and N is monetary reform. And so he is, of course, wanting to convince Greens that MMT is a better way to go than monetary reform. He also did a 2-hour video addressing Greens, which is similarly full of errors and misdirects, which I hope to address in another video. I don't consider myself an expert, but I have studied the money system and its history enough to spot some errors and misdirects in Warren's comments. Warren is the father of MMT. It's his baby, and he has admitted to spending millions promoting MMT. So MMT is a defense of the current system funded by a banker, hedge fund guy, and this is irrelevant to Green Party economics. I do this for the benefit of my fellow Greens who might have questions about Warren's comments. Please feel free to contact me with them.
And me.
And Joe Bongiovanni as well. Yes, we're happy to talk about the money system and why it needs to change and how it needs to change. Always. So let's take a look at Warren's comments and get started. What do you think?
Okay. We could let's just do that. I've got kind of like some big picture kind of stuff that I wanted to mention, but I'll do it periodically throughout, because
all right,
I don't want to let him lead us astray.
Okay, well, we're just going to do, we have already done section M in another video, and so we're doing monetary reform in this video. And so his comments are on
Howard, just a second.
Yes.
We did the debt. We did the debt, and we have a video of what we did on the public debt part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's on my YouTube channel.
Okay. Okay. Got you, Howard.
Now, I haven't shared it anywhere. I thought I sent it to you, but maybe not.
No, you did. You did. You're right. You're right.
And so we speak of the green public money future. The crisis in our financial system makes it imperative that we restructure our monetary system. The present system of privatized money issuance and control has resulted in the misdirection of our financial resources to speculation, toxic financial instruments, and loans that create huge profits and wealth for the corporate few, but inadequate income and jobs for the common people. Warren's response to that is here. He says that actually comes from government regulation and supervision and not the actual monetary operations. Well, let's just look at that statement first.
Howard, is it possible for you to blow that visual up? Because it's hard to, oh yeah, that's much better. That's much better, Howard. That's great. That's great. Yeah. So, all the stuff that's the problems of the monetary system. And he says that's it. Well, the reason that those people can do that is because of government regulation and supervision, or the lack of government regulation and supervision, and not the actual monetary operation. Well, we have we seek a constitutional monetary system where the powers of the right to create money, to issue the money, to benefit from the money issuance, to regulate the value of the money in commerce, in the economy, and that a foreign coin in our international commercial operations, that's what we seek to have. So for Warren to say that all these results are not of the monetary system, are not the failures of the monetary system, it's, it wouldn't be disingenuous if it was smarter by, 3 times. So it's just that whenever he gets something that he doesn't want to deal with, he blames it on the government. That's his MO.
That is the MMT MO, that's for sure. And of course, yeah, we all know that there's inadequate government regulation and supervision. We don't have a government. They have a government. The banks have a government, not us.
Yeah, the big party people, the big party people, as George Carlin calls them. There's a big party going on out there, and you ain't in it, and we're in the Green Party, and so we're trying to get our own party going.
Yeah.
Out here, especially with the monetary system.
And of course, the monetary operations is what gives them such power to do these things.
Oh yeah, the fact that we don't have a really constitutional monetary system where the government has all those powers, and instead the government has a question of lawfully or not delegated its powers to the private banking system, central banking, the private central banking system. That's something that has never been discussed anywhere in our history. Never has it been discussed.
Nor in any of our schools or universities.
Right.
Which is just, it should be shocking to everyone that money being such a central part of our society, such an important daily thing for everyone, to not know anything about it.
Right.
It's pretty
right.
That
yeah.
It reminds me of Marshall Clune talking about the big secrets are kept secret by public incredulity, that people just don't believe stuff or something. But he says, well, I have a list of proposals that directly address those issues. It's not a matter of restructuring the monetary system. Well, of course, I suppose one could come up with a bunch of regulations and stuff that Congress would never pass, because Congress is controlled by the money coming from the banks through their corporations.
Yeah, the funny thing is, to me, a little bit funny, is he says, I have a list of Howard.
Where?
I went to the I call it the memes. MMT always has memes at work, and they change over time. And in the old days, the days back before the fiscal sustainability teach-in in April of 2010, those couple of years before then, the main meme of MMT was, excuse me, self-imposed constraints that can be readily undone. We have self-imposed constraints, and if we didn't have those constraints, Howard, they used to say, if we didn't have those constraints, then we could do all the things that we want to do, Howard. All the things that are in the Green Party platform, that are really kind of like the vision, for what our society should be like. We could do all of those things if we didn't have those self-imposed constraints. And every time something gets in, you go up, self-imposed constraint, self-imposed constraint. So when I got to that fiscal sustainability teach-in in April of 2010, and I raised my hand and I asked the question, I said, who has the list of the self-imposed constraints that we need to unself-impose so that we can do all of these wonderful things? So that's like 12 years ago or something like that, okay? And guess what? I don't have it yet. Bill Mitchell said, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I said,
constraints. I think that's interesting. And of course, I agree with the words that we have self-imposed constraints. Congress does. And
yeah.
And that they could change that. And we support their changing that. by passing the Need Act.
Right, right.
And get rid of all those self-imposed constraints.
Right, exactly. And actually,
And some of those are bank imposed constraints, let's be honest.
well, yeah, but they're bank, yes, they are. But anything that comes out of the congressional, body that becomes the law and a regulation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's all on Congress, I feel, I mean, I think Warren's right about that,
Right.
The Congress has abdicated its responsibility in so many areas. It's just incredible. And I don't forget about the one to create war this week. But anyway, the fact is that to declare war, excuse me, it's just incredible. The people that are in the Congress right now, all they know is how to get the numbers to get the bill passed. That's all they know. They don't care what's in the bill. They don't care anything, the impact of all the things that they're doing. If they can pass the bill, they win.
It's all about party politics.
It's all about party politics.
Yeah.
So anyway, that, as far as that goes, it's not a matter of restructuring the monetary system. Yeah, if you got a list of proposals and they're not including doing anything about the monetary system, Warren, then you're leaving the foundation unfixed, and an unfixed foundation is going to do you all.
And you've done nothing to address the stability of the economy.
Right.
I challenge you to show me the proposal that you have that will stabilize the economy.
Right.
We say it is both possible and necessary for Congress to take back its exclusive constitutional power to create our money without creation of debt.
Well, that's what I was just saying in a way,
Exactly.
I mean,
And that's exactly what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And Congress can do it. Because what did he say? Something. Anyway, so he says, well, that's an oxymoron. As any money the state will accept for tax payment is accounted for as a liability of the state and therefore a debt, which is what today's dollars are. Well,
wow.
There's some confusion. Wow. Confusory. What did you say?
You know what? Here's an oxymoron. You should say, here's an oxymoron. Any money, So see, what would make it an oxymoron? What would make it an oxymoron that the Congress needs to take back its power to create our money and issue it, right? Without the creation of debt. So to issue debt-free money, like the colonies were doing for 100 years before Britain told them they couldn't do it anymore, and we had a revolution.
Right.
Okay.
So where's the oxymoron?
Yeah, where's the oxymoron? He says, he says any money the state will accept for tax payments.
Yeah. He's trying to construct the oxymoron out of the fact that believing that all money is debt no matter what.
It says it's accounted for as a liability of the state. Now, here's the thing, Howard. I'm sorry if I'm going to say this out loud right here at the beginning. That's an effing lie, Howard. I'm sorry. This is not a once over, conundrum, a misunderstanding. This is an effing lie. Because if he says any money the state will accept for tax payments is accounted for as a liability for the state. Let's stop there for a minute, Howard.
Yeah.
What money did we pay our taxes with? What money I don't pay taxes anymore right now, because I'm not that rich. But when I did pay taxes, I sent him a check. And that check was connected to the private bank money system, the privately issued bank money system of the United States of America. And that money was accepted by my government as a payment of taxes. And none of that money was ever even thought about being a liability of the state. So that is a lie. I don't want to say it's horseshit, but it's a lie.
Yeah.
And therefore, and therefore a debt. What if it was the liability of the state makes it a debt? No, the liability of the state does not make it a debt, makes it a liability, and liabilities are managed. A debt is a liability. A debt is one of the liabilities that are listed as a liability. but the money is not listed as a liability. The money that I paid to them is not a liability of the state. I don't understand. It's like how does
Becomes an asset of the state.
Howard, here's the thing. You kind of hit the nail on the head, and maybe we need to have a refocus around the issue. But the fact that we don't teach about the monetary system anywhere in our education system leaves us to be 100% monetarily ignorant. The monetary system exists,
right?
That it's our monetary system, that we can have it do anything that we want by we're asking to reform it is so natural for the Green Party because we want all those things and we recognize we can't get them with this monetary system that Warren Mosler's trying to preserve, But the fact that we don't is really it's not the crime of the century. It's kind of the crime of, since I'm going to say since about 1771 or two, when Britain, said, you know what, we're not going to do that. We had the Boston Tea Party because they said, you can't use your money. You're going to have to go get some other money to pay the tax on this tea. Howard, this is like, I think it's an important point. Okay.
Yeah.
And the colonists said, what did they say? Overboard with your tea. Right here in Boston Harbor. All of it, every bit of it, overboard. You're not imposing a tax on your tea. You don't have your tea. Okay. So it's like the colonists understood money. That was Benjamin Franklin's message to the Europeans when he went over there. Now we understand money. We issue it ourselves without debt, and we just issue enough to exchange the goods that are the wealth that's
because they had already been through so many monetary versions trying to figure it out.
Right, exactly.
Everybody was paying attention.
Exactly. Everybody was paying attention. And let's face it, there was competition actually between the colonies, among the colonies, I should say, for what was going to be the right way to do it ultimately. So when they finally got together, after they said we are going to take up arms to defend our right to have our own monetary system in this newly created country that we're going to have, okay? That ever since they did that, we haven't learned anything. I mean, you might be a specialized student. There's a colonial monetary history at the University of Virginia here in Virginia where I live, but that's so highly specialized and only relating to what the colonies were doing and did to carry that out. But what about our monetary system? What about the monetary system that the Constitution authorized? This 185 up here, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 5. Okay, it's like, what about that monetary system? Where is that?
Yeah,
don't exist except for in the minds of some reformers at the Green Party who were smart enough to put it in the platform. Howard, my hat off to the Green Party's leaders of back a decade or two, or maybe three, actually. I don't know, now that we're getting older. But anyway, so it's just like he comes in here with this and says, any money the state will accept for tax payment. We paid $3 trillion in taxes last year, Howard. 3.2, if I recall right. $3.2 trillion US in taxpayers' money to the government that was accepted. And none of it was a liability of the state. How does Warren Mosler come in here in public and declare such a lie? Okay, it's impossible for it to be true.
No way to show evidence for that.
That's everything. That his whole thing is, well, like he said earlier, I got a list, but you don't have it,
He's never shown it to us.
Anyway.
Yeah. You were talking about how monetary awareness was happening in the colonies, and then it went away. But then it reemerged again post Civil War because of the
Right.
greenbacks,
Right.
and then went away again. And I keep thinking that, was it war trauma that just took that away from the society?
Yeah.
Because every time, there was war.
Yeah.
And of course, that struggle up to 1913, that I imagine there was a lot of noise being made up into World War One about all of that.
Yeah, and plus we were coming from the panic of '07, so the financial and monetary system had been destroyed by JP Morgan Chase.
Crushing.
JP Morgan, excuse me, not JP
Yeah.
Morgan Chase, but by JP Morgan. And yeah, so everybody was kind of scared. Howard, when they run around and tell you, look, this here money thing is complicated, you got to leave it to the experts. If you don't leave it to the experts, you can really screw up the whole thing.
Who are the experts, and what school did they go to become an expert?
Yeah, right. Right. The Wharton School, that's my guess. Anyway.
World Economic Forum.
Okay, the World Economic Forum. Yeah, probably. Probably. Okay, so we're going to move on and see what else Warren had to say.
And what we say is, about without the creation of debt for Congress to create that money and to assume the responsibility to spend this money directly into circulation to fund public benefits outlined in the federal budget. And
very
I
clear.
would say also to fulfill that constitutional mandate that's in the first sentence of the preamble here.
Right.
Right. We just haven't done that.
Right.
And we got the tools to do it.
Right. Okay. So what does Warren Mosler say about that, Howard?
He says close examination shows us that for all practical purpose, this is already the case.
Well, if it was already the case, we wouldn't have to do it.
Exactly.
If it was already the case, the Need Act would have been laughed out of Congress when Dennis Kucinich and the American Monetary Institute brought it forward as a proposal to reform the monetary system, when all the lawyers from the Treasury Department, all the lawyers from all the Federal Reserve banks, and all the lawyers from the Congress, all the lawyers, as Fauci would say, up and down the whatever, all the lawyers were there, and they are there because they have to make sure. And I'm going to say the congressional people writing the legislation, they all have to be there because they have to make sure that what you craft as a proposed law is not already the case. Okay, it's not already the case, because if it's already the case, you can't put it into a proposed law, Howard. So that right there proves again another lie of Warren Mosler's. And if I'm going to be spending my days calling Warren Mosler a liar, I don't mind it, Howard. I do not mind it. But I will.
Yes. And already the case, he says. Boy,
yeah, already.
If that were true, we would have healthcare, education,
right?
All the things that they could do if they had the money and took responsibility.
Howard, one thing that Mosler is really a master at is in terms of the painting of the words, and his painting of the words in this sentence right here. It's about for all practical purposes. Well, what does that mean? For all practical purposes. How about the impractical purposes that it can't possibly be the case legally because of the reasons that I just stated? But what about the practical purposes? Well, more practical purpose in the eye of the beholder. It's whatever Warren Mosler thinks and says.
I mean,
anyway.
He says that Congress has accepted the responsibility to spend the money directly into circulation. And so he says, a check to the military industrial complex for a bunch of billions, that's spending money into circulation.
That money's borrowed mostly.
Yeah, it's borrowed. All of it's borrowed. isn't it? Yeah,
Well, borrowed either from the people of the United States or from the banks.
right.
People that, at least the people's taxes. I'm going
Yeah.
to say this, Howard, you know, this is not widely enough understood. I know that you do, okay? The fact of the matter is that by us paying our taxes and providing it to the government for the government to, as these guys say, resource themselves, okay? Okay. That the government doing that takes a circulation of the money that's already there. It's already in existence. It's part of the money supply. It's in my pocket if I was a taxpayer, okay? And I give it to the government and they do something good with it. The fact that they don't do something good with it is the other problem. What you were saying, you know,
Yeah.
well, how come we got, you know, 800 something billion for war? That don't even count what we sent to Ukraine. But anyway,
That's why there's a deficit.
yeah, right, exactly, and that's really what MMT is all about. You know, like with the deficit myth. You know,
Yeah.
the deficit myth is that the deficit myth matters because there's no problem with the deficit, Howard.
Right.
There would always be a deficit. The question is, how do you finance the deficit?
Right.
Do you borrow the money or do you create it into existence and circulate it by paying for goods and services, just like you said earlier? It's ridiculous that this guy makes believe that he doesn't know what we're talking about. And if he was sitting right here in front of us, I would confront him with that reality right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we know you're not that stupid, Warren. So you're a clever liar. So
well spoken.
So we say only with a public money system can the government direct our national wealth to the needs of the people through their local and state governments. And of course, what's happening now, our government isn't able to direct our national wealth anywhere.
No way, not at all.
You know, it's all dictated to them where it goes.
Howard, you know, I just want to mention this within relation to that, okay? Dr. Hyman Minsky's working paper number 127, which was really the culmination of his life's work. And I'm allowed to say that, okay?
Yeah.
The culmination of his life's work. And in there, he identified the problems of capitalism, okay? And it goes through the banking system. So naturally, he's an economist. He's not talking about the monetary system. He talks about the finance system. And then he talks about the banking system because he's an economist, okay? So he says, the problem is that the banks both create the money and issue it into circulation, they create it, and they finance the capital development of the economy.
Right.
Financing the capital development of the economy is where the monetary system goes wrong.
And then they're able to direct that economic.
Exactly. So if the Green Party wants us to get it back, they know how to do it.
They can choose who gets the monopoly.
Exactly. That's the capital development of the economy, capitalist style.
Right.
And ours is green style. You know, capital development of the economy is doing what we need to do, sharing the wealth, et cetera, et cetera. But we seem to not have, the ability to do that because the system. And this is, by the way, I'm going to carry this through just for a second, Howard. In the end of Hyman Minsky's working paper number 127, which every Green Party person should be, I don't want to say required to read, okay, but it should be curious enough about how the monetary and banking system works to read, okay? If they want to say anything about this discussion, they should be reading that. But in the end, what he says is that the failure of the Federal Reserve banking system, that's capitalism at work, okay, is incapable of meeting the economic needs of a progressive democracy.
Yep.
Now, I don't think I have to say anything else about that, and therefore he called for a national monetary commission for the 21st century. Dr. Hyman Minsky's penultimate work, the conclusion of his work is we need a national monetary system, a national monetary commission, excuse me. So remember how the MMTers say, oh, we're on the shoulders of the giants, and they mentioned Minsky and Werner and all of those guys. But you can't choose. I guess the way I look at it is this, unless somebody puts you up on their shoulders, you ain't on their shoulders. You're just climber. You're just a climber, and you're walking over these people who you claim that you are the.
That's more like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, sorry for that aside. Only with public money.
Right. So only with public money system can the government direct our national wealth to the needs of the people through their local and state governments. That was the other thing that, our proposal gives 25% of the money to state and local governments, and that's a pile. That'll solve their budget problems.
Yeah, I think that the way the economy is right now, if you were to be picking a number as to approximately how much money would be going directly to the states and therefore states, cities, municipalities, etc., or local governments, would be probably about $150 billion, Howard. Maybe 175 billion. Okay. That's just as a matter of there being enough money in the economy to meet the potential to produce more wealth. So we would say that, oh, there's 175 billion. It's in the NEED Act, which is the act that the reform that that the Green Party is proposing. So where's the 175 billion that is done by Congress all the time with grants and assistance? Well, grants and assistance, I told you, Howard, in another life, I was a community development director in Central Vermont. And yeah, we fought for those grants. You all of you getting the money is a competitive thing. You got to write your grant to be the most worthy of being funded, by the criteria that some bureaucrat somewhere sets up. Not that can be done any other way. The problem is that that's where you go. The problem is that you got to go down through the community development program, and you got to get in. You got to get funded by it. And where does that money come from? That's like to me when I was working there, and I used to think, how much of this is actually borrowed money? And sometimes when we did projects, we would get money from them, and then we'd have to go to a bank. And we'd have to get a bank to partner with us to build a building or whatever we were going to be doing. So in other words, the system that we have now is inadequate and the opposite of what we're talking about. We're talking about over giving the money to the states and the towns and the communities for them to meet the needs that they want. So it's sort of like, it's really like community development funding is what it's like. I mean, very much like it, the community development programs that we have now. Warren Mosler says that the kind of things that we're proposing are the kind of things that they do now by Congress.
Hoops and hurdles that are in front of you to do that.
Absolutely.
And so limited.
It's so limited. It's so limited. It's ridiculous. Never been a community development funded program that's adequate to meet the needs of the communities, and the needs of the communities are. And by the way, it's been a few years since I was community development director, Howard. It's only gotten much worse. It's only gotten much worse. And with climate change, the infrastructure problems of cities and towns and states are falling on them.
Yeah.
They're falling on the local communities. So there needs to be a better distribution of the wealth, and that includes the wealth of the creation of the money that can do that. And there's no other way. If there was another way to do it, I would back off and say, let's do it another way. But to me, this is the only way we continue to do it.
Yeah, the money needs to go where the need is, and not wait for people to write grants to try and solve it.
Exactly.
It's absurd. That's totally absurd statement of his right there.
Yeah. So like what you're saying, Howard. Remember what I just said. A lot of times those infrastructure, problems that come about, from flooding and or from, whatever. I'm saying, climate change related, and forget about the cause of climate change, just that it's there, and what it's and how it's related. So the problem is this: you can't wait for another community development funding cycle to get that money.
Really?
You can't, Howard. Okay, I'm just telling you. It's not a need. It's not need related. You know what I mean? It's like, well, the need is there. We got any money? Oh, well, you can try to get it through FEMA. Maybe you can try to get it through FEMA, and you can get some through FEMA. Don't get me wrong. But for all the need of the community that gets destroyed when something like that happens, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing there, and that's why we need public money. Exactly.
That's right. To respond to the needs. So a public money system will enable millions of good livelihoods, provide sufficient incomes, and shrink the debt burden. He says it already does that. And that
It already does that.
Debt is not a good idea.
Okay, Howard, let's see.
So here's
Providing sufficient incomes. It says we already have that. We already have sufficient incomes, Howard. And by the way, that's the opposite of the conclusion that Dr. Hyman Minsky came to.
Right. And I think Warren would actually even say today that there's too much income.
Well, if he talks about, the problem really is, where does the money go? That capital development of the economy role that the banks play today. Okay, they determine everything that the economy is about, because money supports whatever is going to happen, and so the bank money supports this world that we're living in. And Hyman Minsky said, no, we have institutional, we have structural, and we have systemic problems that are incapable of meeting those economic needs of a progressive democracy. And that's why we need to do something about it. And that's why he called for a National Monetary Commission. Oh, we're past the National Monetary Commission here. The Green Party has a platform. We don't need a National Monetary Commission to know what's wrong. We know what's wrong. That's why we have the platform that we have in the party.
That's right. That's right. We're ready to do it. Quit messing around.
Yeah, quit messing around. Get out of it. It's like that Bob Dylan tune. Get out of the new road if you can't lend a hand, because the times, they are changing again.
Yeah, right on. So we say, and begin to close the wealth gap. And he says, my proposals do exactly that with our current monetary system. Close the wealth gap. Oh, yeah, right.
Let's put the bankers in charge of controlling the wealth gap and fixing the wealth gap problem, Howard. Frederick Soddy, Dr. Frederick Soddy, one of my heroes, and he wrote the book on the role of money.
Yeah.
And if there was a second thing that everybody in the Green Party should be reading, it's The Role of Money by Dr. Frederick Soddy.
At least the preface.
At least the preface. Exactly. At least the preface. So, but Howard, here's the thing. And then this is after his study of physics and the physical sciences and the need for wealth, the real wealth, the wealth that we get, all the stuff behind me, this is my wealth, okay? You see this cup, this is my wealth. I got a car outside and an old pickup truck, my wealth. But to produce the wealth that we need in order to keep on going, okay? And what he says is the role of money in society and in the social economy is to distribute the wealth. The monetary system distributes the wealth. So what do we have today? Bernie Sanders, Bernie, I got my old Bernie sticker back here. Bernie Sanders says it, and I don't know the numbers, but the gigantic lack of proportionality to the distribution of the wealth in this country is embarrassing and a travesty, okay? So Warren says his proposals do exactly that with our monetary system. Well, wait a second. You only describe, you say MMT only describes what we're doing now. And what we're doing now is coming out with a disastrous lack of distribution of the wealth that's produced and the income that goes along with it. Disastrous lack of equality.
Even if there wasn't anybody taking advantage of the system does it. The system does it systematically, concentrates wealth. So how can you say
Yeah,
it's fixing things? It is the problem. Because you see, you can just look at distribution of interest and see, you know, what's going on with
yeah,
system.
yeah. What else?
He says, we say public money has not been issued since greenbacks introduced by Lincoln in 1862 and circulating as public money until 1971. Our cash in circulation is the same thing.
Oh my God. You know, there's always an inkling of truth.
There's always an inkling of truth. Exactly.
You know, and I have talked, I have talked, you know, a lot about the fact that the reason that central bank digital currency is here is to do away with our currency. Okay.
Yeah.
And even though you and I complain about the fact that the currency is issued by the private banks right now, and they do, okay, they issue, okay. The fact of the matter is that a Federal Reserve dollar, when it enters circulation, stays in circulation. It's like permanent money. All the legal tender money that's issued in this country stays in circulation.
That's right.
So even though the numbers on it, the currency, continue to increase, by the way, besides the central bank digital currency BS lie, okay, which is that, oh, we're not even using money anymore, currency anymore, I mean, paper money anymore. We're not even using that anymore. No, just take a look at the currency coin part of the M1 money supply, and you'll see it just continues to grow like crazy. So the fact of the matter is that what they want to do is to take away from us the only thing that we have that is truly anti-inflationary in terms of yes, it's a debt, okay, but it's a debt that continues to circulate. You don't need to replace it with more debt,
right?
Which is what we do with bank money.
Yeah,
you know, the bank money, that's 98 or 9% of the money.
Catherine Austin Fitz was saying, you know, let's take all our money out in cash, make our own economy, screw the banks.
Well, I like the attitude and the concept. I guess what I would say is we should all be doing what she's saying that we should be doing, but not necessarily just to screw the banks, but to preserve ourselves.
Preserve ourselves.
Because if the financial system goes down because of a lack of monetary repair, okay, the system is insolvent right now, Howard. The central bank, the global central banking system is insolvent right now, okay? We're borrowing money to pay the interest on the money that we already borrowed. That's the name of insolvency. That's the definition of insolvency. The whole thing is insolvent, Howard, okay? So for anybody to say that we don't need to fix it, you know, it's like, well, what planet are you living on? You know, you're among the millionaires, and you figure, well, you don't need to fix anything, you know. Well, that's fine, but for the rest of us, we need to fix it just so that we can, you know, buy our groceries, you know, and pay our bills. That's why we need to fix it. So I don't get this. I don't get this that we have members of the Green Party, Howard. I'm just sorry to say this, but I don't get that we have members of the Green Party that believe this BS comes out of Warren Mosler's mouth.
I know that give any credence to this kind of nonsense.
Right.
For instance, so we go on, we say to reverse the private control of issuing our nation's money. And we know it's private control because the banks issue the money. That's private control right there.
Yeah.
He
Well,
said,
I like Warren's answer here, though. Resulting from direct congressional policy, let's say, okay, we want to change that policy. We want to direct the Congress to change that policy.
right.
Okay, so he should be on board with that. As a matter of fact, to be honest with you, anybody who's an MMTer who understands what's going on, I'm talking about Stephanie Kelton, Bill Mitchell, Matt Forstater, all those guys, they should be going after monetary reform because they should be realizing by now that they've been talking about all these weird memes that they say, about it, like as if if we had MMT, it would do something for us. After all those years they should be able to see, no, the only way that we can really do this is by changing the monetary system.
Right.
And doing it in a way that removes the obstacles from wealth equality and income equality and social equality and all of those things. If we have to do that, we need a new monetary system to do it.
Right.
Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, so direct congressional policy. Okay, so Warren, I understand that you're down there right now, as we're speaking, right here. You're down there in the Congress, and you're getting those people in Congress to change the policies that are wrong and that are screwing everybody over because you're so concerned about it.
You better have a big wad of money
Yeah.
to get them to do it. That's how it works. So, to place control over money with a more equitable public system of governmental checks and balances and end the regular recurrence of severe and disruptive financial crises that mark the booms and bust cycles of capitalism. And that's the thing people need to learn too, is that that's a function of the monetary system, that boom and bust cycle.
Oh yeah. I mean, you could ask Milton Friedman about that one.
Yeah.
Friedman. You could ask Milton Friedman about that one because it was a pet peeve of his, that the booms and the busts result from the central banking system, and he was aware of that, and he wanted to change it. Ironically, the guy who believed in free markets, and when it got down to the question of, well, how does a guy who believed in free markets come to want to have a monetary system where the government creates and issues all the money without any debt? And you know what his answer was? Capitalism and free markets cannot exist without a level playing field.
Yeah.
And the level playing field is same public money thing again. He called it something else. He put his own name on it. But it was exactly the same thing. Congress is responsible for issuing the money. Banks are responsible for lending the money, that kind of a thing. He was all for that. It's amazing that he was all for that, but he was worried about the money supply. So he tried to tie it to a rule, money by rule, that said, well, the money supply can only increase by 3% a year or something like that. And that's fine. But if you really think about inflation, the money supply should be growing according to the resources that are available to increase the wealth in the economy, to take it through commerce, through the transactions of commerce into gross domestic product, the way we measure it now. We don't want to measure it that way, but that's how we measure it now. So he says, so in order for us to do that, we need to have a level playing field. And you can't have a level playing field when one group of players in the economy gets to create the money and determine the capital development of the economy.
Right. And create an economy full of monopolies.
Right. Monopoly powers.
Yeah. He says he has proposed to sustain full unemployment at all times. Well, show
full,
it to us.
Full employment, Howard. Full employment, Howard.
Yeah.
Full employment. He says, I have proposals to sustain full employment at all times. So do we.
Yeah.
So do we, you know?
So do
What's
we.
your proposal and what's our proposal?
Yeah.
Ah.
Here's our proposal. What's yours?
Right. So here they are, the Green Party
Here they
proposes.
Nationalize the 12 Federal Reserve banks and transfer the administrative functions to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors to the Bureau of the U.S. Treasury. He says they're already branches of the Fed's, already entirely a public bank. Well, there are so many people that have disputed that who actually worked for the Fed.
Yeah, Howard, look at what he's really saying. First of all, we say nationalize the 12 Federal Reserve banks and transfer their administrative functions to the Board of Governors to the Bureau, to Treasury. He says they're already branches of the Fed. We didn't say they were not already branches of the Fed. We said they are branches of the Fed and we want to nationalize them. And then he says, which is already entirely a public bank. Howard, did I say it loud enough? It's a freaking lie, a freaking lie. It's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. Warren Mosler is a liar.
Right. And that whole business that they are already branches of the Fed. That reminds me of his response to Joe Polito's question with socialism. It started socialism. I thought, pull that out of his ass just to confuse things.
Right.
Man, what an ass.
Well, Joe didn't mind as much as I did.
Oh. He says they're already branches. Yes, well, we know that. And but they're not an entirely public bank. That's ridiculous.
Zero. There's zero public bank. There's zero public in the bank.
That's right.
Zero public in the Federal Reserve Bank.
The other way around. That's what central banks are about. They're about controlling governments.
Howard, we can't ever, to me, like I worry because I know that the reason I didn't want to hear anything about central bank digital currency was because it's central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
My dad warned me about a lot of things. A lot of them I didn't think he was right about, and I doubted a lot of them for a long time. But he said, in the end, they will come to take the money away. Okay, central bank digital currency. What are they going to take away? Just the currency. Well, why? Well, because they already own the rest. They already own the rest. Why? Well, they're only going to take away. They're only going to take away the currency.
They don't. Yeah.
So we say. When they come, it'll be an international movement.
Right.
When they come, it will be an international solution, because the economies of the various nations, of the 130 whatever nations there are, will be incapable of servicing the debt from this system. And so we need to have something. And that's why the Great Reset is all about now. The Great Reset is going to be all about, hey, America, you owe us $35 trillion today. Well, it's kind of, we're going to have to pay up some of that. Where are you guys going to get that? And this is what I like about Warren Mosler, when he says about the debt is just tax money that hasn't been paid back, into the economy, into the government. Okay, so we borrowed the money, and MMT says it's not a problem to borrow the money. We have the power to create money. So if we borrow the money at any time, we can just create the money and pay it back. That's what they say, Howard. I don't know if you follow them all the way through, but that's what they say. So that begs the question. Well, if we had the power to create the money, why would we borrow it in the first place?
Exactly.
Why would we borrow money in the first place? The answer is we don't have the power to create the money. That's the answer. So plain and simple, get through the BS lies of modern monetary theory, Warren Mosler and his ilk at central banking, at the central bankers. Anyway, and that's why the MMTs are all supporting central bank digital currency right now, Howard.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. They are.
Yeah. And we have to understand central banks are about controlling governments. So if a central bank's coming up with an idea, you can bet that it's about solidifying their control of government.
Right.
And that means us.
Exactly. Exactly. Any more lies up here, Howard?
Oh, yeah, he's got a few more. Let's see. All money created under the nationalized Federal Reserve System will be treated as publicly issued money. That's the beauty of that transition. Anyway, the private creation of money will cease, and with it, the reckless practices that have led to the recurring economic crisis. And he says, you are calling for an end to bank lending? Now, of course, we didn't say that at all. We didn't say that at all. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's a misdirect.
Right.
And my proposals again, oh, they're going to fix everything. Okay, yeah, but where are your proposals? We haven't seen them. We've got our proposals here, but you got nothing, dude.
You got nothing. You got nothing but his self-image gravitas.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure what happened here. Kind of confused about what.
Oh, there must have been another sentence in there, right? Because it comes out as number 2. All new money will be issued.
It seems like it should be. All new money will be issued as a debt-free permanently circulating asset by the federal government. And
well, it wouldn't be the one that's below it, right, Howard?
well,
Well, anyway, the fact is that what we've got there, he responds to it anyway.
yeah. And again, with this, that describes a permanent zero rate policy, which I have long proposed.
Does not. That's another lie. Okay, that doesn't describe a zero rate policy.
It's preying on people's ignorance of it.
Exactly. There's no rate. You don't need a rate when you have debt-free money. There's no rate.
Right.
There's no rate when you have debt-free money.
Right,
you're so deeply, immersed in the lies that you're speaking that they can just run out of your mouth without any recourse, because there's nobody there to correct Warren Mosler. There never is, and there never has been. And that's why I want to debate with him, Howard.
Yeah. He says a permanent zero rate policy. What's that mean? That means that we're going to be selling bonds at zero?
Yeah.
Who's going to buy them?
Yeah, who's going to buy them, Howard?
How's that fix anything? It don't. Another crazy.
No, that's because it's impossible for Warren to envision that there would actually be monetary finance of government operations. It's impossible for him to envision it, to accept it, to think about it, to ponder it. Okay, it's impossible because he's a banker.
Yeah,
he's a banker. That's all he knows. He's a banker.
Right.
Come on, MMT. Come on.
He's like what Henry Simon says. He fears money and trusts debt.
Exactly.
So a new public monetary authority will be established under the Department of Treasury to scientifically determine the amount of money that can be safely created for the national economy to avoid inflation and deflation. He says that's already being done. But
imagine that there are among the Green Party people out there somebody who would possibly believe that statement.
Right.
This is being done right now. They're determining. Howard, we have an elastic money system, they say,
right.
Elastic money system.
Right.
And in the elastic money system, nobody is responsible for figuring out how much money we need. It's elastic. It goes on, they say,
it's as much as they can get.
Yeah, right. It's all the lending they can do when the economy's going up. Right. And it's as little as they can do when the economy's coming down.
Right.
So there's a pushing on the string and a pulling on the string, but there's never any prediction of what the economy is going to, the number of dollars that there has to be in the economy. Nobody's job to do that. If you say the CBO and the Fed forecasters, hey, Howard, I'm going to put out another thing to the Fed. Okay, I told you for the work of the general counsel, I'm waiting to hear back from them. But the fact is that you have to write to the Fed and say, whose job is it to scientifically determine the amount of money that can be safely created for the national economy next year in order to avoid inflation and deflation. And everybody will say, not mine. you know,
Right.
the Fed don't do that, you know.
Right.
My God.
And the forecasters, what forecasters there are, economists, etc., are generally wrong.
Right. Well, what they're making, that's the thing. The thing what they're doing is they're taking a bet, so to speak, on the amount of lending that the banks will do
Right.
in the next year. That's what it is, you know. So it's like there's no requirement for it to be anything. There's only the fact that it's a crapshoot because we believe in free markets. You know, I believe in free markets too, Howard, but not with money.
Yeah, right.
Not with money.
Not with money.
No, I don't believe in free markets with money. If you're in a market, then you're in a risk-taking you know, venture. And so the monetary system should not be a risk-taking venture. It should be the opposite. Right. It should be the thing that provides the safety and stability for the transactions in the economy. That's the role of the monetary system. Again, according to Saudi, right?
It should be the stable mechanism of distributing wealth.
Yep.
Yeah. And interesting thing. Remind me to tell you something about that later.
Okay.
The monetary authority will be empowered with full autonomy and independence to avoid political influence. That may be difficult to do, but
well, Howard, the thing is that all you can do is legislate it and regulate it. That's all you can do. Okay, you know, make the people that violate the you know, the truism of an independent and autonomous monetary authority, got to get their heads cut off. I'm sorry, but that's what I think is going to have to be the case.
I think too that once we've changed that monetary system, there'll be a psychological shift as well.
Oh, absolutely.
It will be just better and nicer and more honest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Howard, the banking system is going to be changed from the creditocracy. The creditocracy, the people who manage the credit in society, it's going to be replaced with from them being the power, the creditocracy being the power, to an unknown, previously unaccounted for group of people called the depositors at the bank. They're going to be in charge of everything. And yes, that is going to change the way that banks act. It is going to, it's going to make them, number one, have a sharper pencil because there's nobody else to put their losses on.
That's right. And it'll make them more competitive.
Exactly. And they have to be competitive. Or they're going to have to move into, I'm going to say, a specialized field of finance. You know, who's going to finance all the mortgages? Is that going to become a public, excuse me, public financing, you know, authority, or is it going to continue to be private? And if it's private, how are you going to do it to make sure that the loans that you make don't go to the people that can't afford to repay them like we did in the last round, but only go to the people that can repay exactly that, and to have the confidence that there's going to be income in the economy to keep it going, because there's no confidence of having income in this economy. You know, that's why people are buying the Bitcoins. That's why they're buying, you know, they're buying the crap, you know, that's why they're going virtual, because they can't see it any other way. They make believe that that virtual reality, excuse me, is more real and assured than the actual reality that we have out there, which I admit is full of risk and full of unknowns and uncertainty. But that's because the way we did it was to build it according to the private capitalists' central banking model of the monetary system.
Constant self-interest, profit motivated mindset out there all the time trying to get you.
Yep. Okay, let's go through. What else? Any other lies out here? All
Oh,
right.
let's see, he says that, and so we say, talk about the monetary authority, and he says, a fourth branch of government, elected officials, how do you keep from getting politicized? Well, first of all, we didn't say they were elected officials,
Right,
right?
right, right. And you know, this question about the fourth branch of government is actually a pretty good question, okay? Because the monetary authority has to be empowered with certain authorities, okay, certain powers and authorities that nobody else has.
Yeah.
That nobody else has. And that is to determine the amount of money in circulation.
And that makes the fourth branch of government.
It sort of does because of the fact that all the things that the government does has to be financed.
Right.
Okay. But anyway, how do you keep it from getting politicized? Well, here's the thing, Howard. I'll tell you how you keep it from getting politicized. You don't let the banks create the money.
Right.
That's how it gets politicized. The banks create the money. Now they own Washington.
Yeah. And they
that's how it's politicized.
And politicizing means dividing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And splitting. And whereas a fourth branch of government and our Congress is dependent on that, I would say there would be a great bipartisan support for the monetary authority.
Right. Me too. Me too. Once you get the other politics out of it,
there wouldn't be any partisans.
Right.
Well, although the banks continue as financial intermediaries, which they don't now, but they would then,
right,
with our system, lending publicly issued money at interest and performing traditional banking functions, they will no longer be allowed to create money, ending what is known as fractional reserve banking. He says, oh, that ended when we off the gold standard. Banking today isn't reserve constrained as it was then. Well, we didn't say that it wasn't reserve constrained. We said it was the fractional reserve banking system.
Right, right. So here's the thing, Howard. I think that first sentence kind of, I have a little problem with that first phrase in that sentence, first clause. It says banks will continue as financial intermediaries. I would say, as people think they are now.
Yeah.
People think that banks are financial intermediaries right now, and they're not, because they create the money that they lend.
Oh yeah, because it says continue.
Right, right. So I'm just going to say, like, to me, that's a little bit of a wrinkle that I hadn't picked out before in terms of reading
It should say, although banks will be financial intermediaries.
Right, will become, or something like that.
These people.
Banks will become. But anyway, the fact is, okay, let's see. He said that ended. Now that, what was that? Ended when we went off the gold standard. What ended?
Fractional reserve banking.
Another freaking lie. Another freaking lie. I can't believe it, Howard.
Right. And the
banking today isn't reserve constrained. Banking today isn't reserve constrained as it was then. Now it was more reserve constrained when we had the gold standard.
Yeah.
I grant you that.
Yeah.
But we just moved into fractional reserve banking without the gold standard. So it's like have you seen Regulation D, Howard? I've been trying to circulate it to people. Talks about the reserve requirements for depository institutions of the Federal Reserve banking system. That's what it does. Reserve requirements for. Now, today they've reduced the required reserves to 0% of the loans. So Howard,
change it.
Exactly. But the thing of it is that, remember what I said earlier, the system is insolvent. A lot of the last 20 years, movement of reducing interest rates to try to keep the economy going, okay? And that's so people can take out more loans, okay? And with those loans, they can pay off some loans, you know what I mean? So there's a constant, well, I'm going to say rolling over of debt, never being able to pay off debt, because if you pay off debt, The debt is the money supply. Now, that's the debt that is the money supply, is the private debt, is the money supply, okay? Private debt, it's not A for A and B for B, but the private debt is what creates the money supply, M1, and then M1 becomes M2, that is an accumulated as capital or as savings or as investment resources. But the money supply needs to be stable. It needs to be secure. It needs to add security. It has to add stability. That's why my dad called his Center for Economic Stability. That's what he called his movement that he was involved with, okay? The Center for Economic Stability. That's why Friedman called it that, by the way. So the thing is that to say that banking today isn't reserve constrained as it was then, well, then how is it constrained? If banking isn't constrained by those ridiculously permissive reserve standards, when they create trillions of dollars of reserves, when they pay interest on reserves, and yet they don't have a reserve requirement. And people don't realize there's something wrong here, Howard. I mean,
yeah, right. And
that ended when we went off the gold standard. No, nothing ended when we went off the gold standard except the gold standard. And it's funny that you remember it the wrong way each time. You either remember it that we went off the gold standard in 1971, which is not when we went off the gold standard. We went off the gold standard in 1934 as a result of a 1933 act. But when we went off then, ever since then, we've been borrowing money that the private central banking system of the United States, what I call it, Howard, the private central banking system of the United States of America, okay? And we have been borrowing money to use, we have been issuing debts, we've been signing off on debts to have the money to use. Now, we should always have to borrow, we will always have to borrow because our needs are inadequately financed. That is to say, we don't have the money, we don't have the income, to do the things that we need to do. So we'll borrow. But if we borrow and we go back to the financial intermediary category, okay, that is to say, remember what I said, it's the depositor's money that provides the basis for the lending that takes place by the banks. So we get away from borrowing the money. We lend the credit, okay? The banks lend credit, and when they lend credit, because they have the money, okay? Now we have fractional reserve. Now we have only the fraction of the reserves today, okay? The 10%, the 0%, whatever it is, doesn't matter, because those are the required reserves that you have to lend. But we have trillions of dollars in excess reserves, Howard. Trillions of dollars in excess reserve, all within the Federal Reserve's interbank lending and operation, interbank lending, interbank money. We have trillions of dollars for those guys, not so much for us. Great system, great system.
Yeah, a system devised by somebody who is self-interested.
Yeah, status quo.
And here's the worst part of his comments. Specific guidance for a progressive, publicly controlled monetary system or monetary authority can be found in a bill already entered into the U.S. Congress, H.R. 2990, 112th Congress, National Emergency Employment Defense Act of 2011. He says, I haven't seen it.
Howard, do you have Warren's email address?
No.
Okay, well, I've seen it floating around, so I'm going to get it. When I get it, I'm going to find his thing, and then I'm going to send him a copy of the NEAT Act.
Yeah.
Because what he'll still say he hasn't seen it, because that doesn't matter, because he's a liar.
Okay. We don't care.
But I don't want him to be able to say that nobody sent it to me,
No, he's seen it. That's the thing.
Of course.
He's seen it.
Remember, Joe Firestone, Mr. MMT himself, read the NEAT Act out loud on was it a coffee house? I don't remember if it was a coffee house or not. but he did it on a YouTube,
Uh-huh.
and he just kept saying how great it was.
Yeah.
Just kept saying how great it was. Unbelievable.
Amazing.
I haven't seen it.
All new money spent in the circulation by the U.S. government as authorized by Congress for public purposes. And of course, he says, well, that's already happening, so we don't need to change the system.
Imagine. Imagine.
For
Imagine.
public purpose.
Right.
Yeah, wars and all that stuff the banks want is public purpose.
Already the case.
And this includes funding for a 21st century infrastructure, including education and healthcare. Well, this can be easily done right now under current institutional arrangements. If it could, it would have been. It would have been already. Because the need's already there. And if we could do it, it would have been done.
Right.
Can't do it because Congress is in the pocket of the banks.
Yep. Now, Howard, I want to say this because before I mentioned about $175 billion would be the amount of money annually being provided to the states for their,
Yeah.
you know, for the needs of the states and local governments. But the amount of money that would be created in that economy by the Congress for public purposes would be more in the neighborhood of $600 or $750 billion.
Right.
Okay, so that's the money. So he's saying, already the case. Already the case. Congress is spending, creating money and spending it into circulation to the tune of $600 or $700 billion. He says, already the case. You see how he can just, the lies just roll off and they just keep rolling off.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where he leaves it.
Feel free to distribute this response. Thanks, Warren. Okay, so Howard, great.
Yeah.
Great. We've had a chat about, you know, this part of Warren's, what do I want to say? You know, like to me, when I see Warren speaking, I think the only word that comes to mind is dissembling.
Yeah.
You know, you keep the mouth going and you don't really have to say anything, but just make sure that you keep the mouth going and not saying anything. Okay. So,
Ecobabble, econobabble.
Econobabble, right. So, well, I'm just going to say this one thing, Howard, because this goes back to the other part about the debt. Howard, did you know that if you that the public debt is the money system?
The public debt is the money system.
Right, right. That's what he said. You know, one of our things he says, oh, we said, oh, if we're going to pay off the debt. I mean, you know, the Green Party is just in keeping really with the NEED Act's proposals that you pay off the public debt when it comes due. Okay, you need to have money to do that.
Mm-hmm. Can't do it with debt very well.
And then he said, yes, right, exactly. You can't do it with debt at all. You cannot do it with debt. You cannot reduce it a nickel with debt. Okay?
I know that's the thing that's so crazy about it.
So he says, no, the money supply is, you know, I forget what it says like he said over here. It's another way of looking at, you know, the money supply. He said the national debt is another way of looking at the money supply. The national debt is the money supply. That's really what he said. For all practical purposes, something like
Crazy.
that.
That wouldn't be very much of a money supply.
Well, it wouldn't be enough. It would only be. Well, actually, if it was circulating, you know, the problem with the debt and the concept of the debt is the money that the public debt enables to be spent into the economy happens in the year that the public debt is issued. Okay, it's when the certificates of indebtedness are issued and financed by somebody, and that money goes to the Treasury, and the Treasury spends it. Okay. Now the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that, and all the years after that, Howard, public debt takes money out of the economy to pay the interest to the bankers. Okay, takes money out of the economy. So to say that the public debt is the money supply, I mean, how freaking twisted is that? okay, to say that, you know, it's the money supply. No, it's the thing that devastates the money supply, the ability of the money supply to do anything. But Howard, the other thing that he says about the debt, I want you to think about this, okay? When you talk about the debt, he says it's the money supply. And then on the other hand, he says, the public debt is nothing more than a savings account at the Federal Reserve in New York, building in New York, okay? Well, the money supply, which the Federal Reserve System tells us what the money supply is, to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, mostly, almost exclusively. Okay, so they tell us what the money supply is.
Yeah.
They don't say that it's a savings account. In fact, they say it actually is a checking account. Okay. It's the balance in the checking account, in the checking account of the people who take out loans.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So for them to say that it's a savings, the debt itself, the public debt that the public borrows, not the private people. The private people create the money supply by borrowing it. Okay, that's probably not exactly the right way to say that, but that's the way that it is. You know, they give a promissory note, and that promissory note allows the bank to create the money and lend it to them, and then they have to pay it back over time. Excuse me. But how can it be that the public debt is both a savings account at the Fed and the money supply? And the answer is because Warren Mosler talks through his ass.
Right.
That's why, you know, that's why. I could say he's a white man speaking out of both sides of his mouth at the same time, but that's too generous, I feel, you know, it's too generous. It's almost like being a white man, you could have that license, you know, but he's a banker. And as a banker, he's just talking BS, major BS onto the Green Party of the United States. And we reject it. You know, I reject it as a monetary reformer, whether I was part of the Green Party or not. But the fact of the matter is that Warren Mosler is the only guy who can keep talking about this stuff in ways that don't make any sense and continue to get away with it. And he feels like as long as he can keep spending his money and keep sending kids to take courses, you know, here and there on modern monetary theory.
Right.
Howard, hey, this is for everybody. I'm sorry, Howard. This is for everybody, okay? The Levy Economics Institute, which is still one of my favorite, economic organizations in the country, took it upon themselves to actually teach MMT. Okay. Okay. Now they didn't have a textbook. Okay, they didn't have a textbook, but still they said we're going to teach MMT. They offer a masters of science in economic theory, is what they do. You know, and so that's an opening for them to teach MMT. Well, we need the same thing. Okay, that's what we need. Okay, so we could teach it, but you need millions of dollars to be backing it up in order for somebody to go to work there to teach it.
Exactly.
So Howard, here's the good thing. I've been wondering for years. If I was wealthy, I would have signed up for that course, you know, just because I feel like I need to know what they're teaching. But Howard, the really good news, I mean this. Levy Economic Institute has made available for anybody who goes to their website, okay, that you can get the courses or the ones that they've decided to make public. That I don't mean that all the courses, but a whole lot of them, and really, I don't know how to put it this way. You know? Something you could really learn from, how they do it, how they teach it. You know, I took the MMT, I took the deficit, course. The Henry George School, brought an MMTer in to teach that. You know?
Yeah.
And I took that. But here, and I've watched two of them through, and the third one that I'm watching through, but they bring these professors in, Howard, and they don't talk about anything that really makes sense. They don't provide any context for what they're doing. They just start talking about stuff and throwing this out and that out, this out and that out. And I said to myself, if I was a person in that classroom, I'd kind of be outraged, you know? It's like you got to kind of start out and say what we're going to be talking about and why it's important and why each of these things matters to the monetary system, et cetera, et cetera. It matters to MMT, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't. Their thing is wide open wide open economic theory, not monetary theory, wide open economic theory. Okay, alternative economic theories. But all I'm saying is that people want to really know how they're teaching this topic, because it's still taught. It's still part of the teaching at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, even though Randy Ray and Stephanie Kelton are not there anymore. But others have gone there. Scott Fulweiler's there, and others are still there. So they're still trying to teach it out of Kansas City, but in fact, now the way I look at it is what's happening with the Levy Economics Institute is most of what MMT is about. And I'm really glad to have a glimpse into the teaching and how they teach it and make people think, because I used to go to the always went to the Levy Economics Minsky conferences that they have every spring. So when I'm there, I was always running into the students. The students go to the Minsky conference, and so I sit down at the table with them, and I tell them I'm a monetary reformer, and then I hear them start spouting off stuff. Well, you just got to read more. You got to read more MMT. They keep saying you got to read more MMT. I'm like, well, I think I read it all except for the textbook that Randy Ray and Bill Mitchell and I forget who else put out. I said I haven't read that because last time I looked, it was like $600 or $700, and
right.
I have to buy something for $600 or $700. $600 or $700. That's a major capital improvement. So anyway, but it's there. So I just invite people, if you want to know a little bit more about how MMT does its thing, go to the Levy Economics Institute. And I want to thank the Levy Economics Institute for putting it out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Howard, have we?
Well, I think we pretty much covered all of Warren's comments and all of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, Greens, please give us any questions that you.
Yeah, let us know what you think. Write back to either to the Green Party at BMRC. Is there a email thing for them, Howard, to get in touch with the BMRC?
Yeah, you can write BMRC. Well, it's on the website. I can't remember the.
Okay. I don't remember it either, but anyway, the thing is that it's like the BMRC at the Green Party or something.
But you can contact us through the Green Party website. You'll be able to find a link for us looking under committees. And we are the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee. And so you can click on that link and that'll give you a way to contact us.
Howard, if there is an email, if there is a way for like an email contact, if you could find it, if you could put it in the description of this video, it would help.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, Howard.
Okay.
I'm signing off, brother.
All right.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Take care. Good central banking. Remember, central banking, it's the problem.
The problem. And
okay, Rod. Next time.
Reform is the solution.
Yep. Amen.
All right.
Ciao.